Verses 16 to 26. The wonderful supply which God blessed his people with at Beer, v16, which signifies the well or fountain. It is said, v10, they pitched in Abeth, which signifies bottles, so called perhaps because there they filled their bottles with water, which should last them for some time, but by this time, we may suppose, it was with them as it was with Hagar, General 21:15, the water was spent in the bottle, yet we do not find that they murmured, and therefore God, in compassion to them, brought them to a well of water, to encourage them to wait on him in humble silence and expectation and to believe that he would graciously take cognizance of their wants, though they did not complain of them. In this world, we do at the best but pitch in Abeth, where our comforts lie in close and scanty vessels. When we come to heaven we shall remove to Beer, the well of life, the fountain of living waters. Hitherto we have found, when they were supplied with water, they asked it in unjust discontent, and God gave it in just displeasure, but here we find that God gave it in love. v16 Gather the people together, to be witnesses of the wonder, and joint sharers in the favor, and I will give them water. Before they prayed, God granted and anticipated them with the blessings of his goodness. That they received it with joy and thankfulness, which made the mercy doubly sweet to them. v17. Then they sang this song, to the glory of God and the encouragement of one another, spring up, O well. Thus they pray that it may spring up, for promised mercies must be fetched in by prayer. They triumph that it does spring up, and meet it with their joyful acclamations. With joy must we draw water out of the wells of salvation. Isa 11:3. As the brazen serpent was a figure of Christ, who is lifted up for our cure, so is this well a figure of the Spirit, who is poured forth for our comfort, and from whom flow to us rivers of living waters. Jn 7:38. Does this well spring up in our souls? We should sing to it, take the comfort to ourselves, and give the glory to God. Stir up this gift, sing to it, spring up, O well. Thou fountain of gardens, to water my soul. Cant 4:15, plead the promise, which perhaps alludes to this story. Isa 41:17, 18, I will make the wilderness wells of water. That whereas before the remembrance of the miracle was perpetuated in the names given to the places, which signified the people's strife and murmuring, now it was perpetuated in a song of praise, which preserved on record the manner in which it was done. v18 The princes digged the well, the 70 elders, it is probable, by direction of the lawgiver, that is, Moses, under God, with their staves, that is, with their staves they made holes in the soft and sandy ground, and God caused the water miraculously to spring up in the holes which they made. Thus the pious Israelites long afterwards, passing through the valley of Baca, a dry and thirsty place, made wells, and God by rain from heaven filled the pools. PS 84:6. Observe. God promised to give them water, but they must open the ground to receive it, and give it vent. God's favors must be expected in the use of such means as lie within our power, but still the excellency of the power is of God. The nobles of Israel were forward to set their hands to this work, and used their staves, probable those that were the ensigns of their honor and power, for the public service, and it is upon record to their honor. And we may suppose that it was a great confirmation to them in their offices, and a great comfort to the people, that they were made use of by the divine power as instruments to this miraculous supply. By this it appeared that the spirit of Moses, who must shortly die, rested in some measure upon the nobles of Israel. Moses did not strike the ground himself, as formerly the rock, but gave them direction to do it, that their staves might share in the honor of his rod, and they might comfortably hope that when he should leave them yet God would not, but that they also in their generation should be public blessings, and might expect the divine presence with them as long as they acted by the direction of the lawgiver. For comfort must be looked for only in the way of duty, and, if we would share in divine joys, we must carefully follow the divine direction. We have here an account of the victories obtained by Israel over Sihon and Og, which must be distinctly considered, not only because they are here distinctly related, but because long afterwards the memorial of them is distinctly celebrated, and they are severally assigned as instances of everlasting mercy. He slew Sihon king of the Amorites, for his mercy endureth forever, and Og the king of Bashan, for his mercy endureth forever. PS 136:19, 20. Israel sent a peaceable message to Sihon king of the Amorites, v 21, but received an unpeaceable return, worse than that of the Edomites to the like message, ch 2018, 20. For the Edomites only refused them a passage, and stood upon their own defense to keep them out, but Sihon went out with his forces against Israel in the wilderness, out of his own borders, without any provocation given him, v 23, and so ran himself upon his own ruin. Jephthah intimates that he was prompted by his politics to do this, Judge 11:20. Sihon trusted not Israel to pass through his coast, but his politics deceived him, for Moses says, God hardened his spirit and made his heart obstinate, that he might deliver him into the hand of Israel. Do. 2:30. The enemies of God's church are often infatuated in those very counsels which they think most wisely taken. Sihon's army was routed, and not only so, but all his country came into the possession of Israel, v 24:25. This seizure is justified against the Amorites themselves, for they were the aggressors, and provoked the Israelites to battle, and yet, perhaps, that would not have been sufficient to entitle Israel to their land, but that God himself, the King of nations, the Lord of the whole earth, had given them a grant of it. The Amorites formed one of the devoted nations whose land God had promised to Abraham and his seed, which promise should be performed when the iniquity of the Amorites should be full. General 15:16. Jephthah insists upon this grant as their title, Judge 11:23-24. The victory which God gave them over the Amorites put them in possession, and then, the promise made to their fathers having given them a right, by virtue of that they kept possession. Against the Moabites, who had formerly been the Lord's proprietors of this country. If they should ever lay claim to it, and should plead that God himself had provided that none of their land should be given to Israel for a possession, do 2:9, Moses here furnishes posterity with a replication to their plea, and Jephthah makes use of it against the Amorites 260 years afterwards, when Israel's title to this country was questioned. 1. The justification itself is that though it was true this country had belonged to the Moabites, yet the Amorites had taken it from them some time before, and were now in full and quiet possession of it, v 26.